Good evening, everyone. This is Jared. This is my channel, Mazda V3K. And in today's video, we are going to recharge an AC system that is low on refrigerant. In this case, it's my 1995 Mazda Miata. Without further ado, let's get started. Okay, we are now inside the sewing machine. That valve chatter is so bad when it's cold. We're going to turn on the air conditioner and you should hear it engage. So we'll turn the blower on first. Yep, there it goes. So it turned on. But, okay, it just turned off. So we're going to put my temp gun on one of the vents here. We're going to get the vent kind of straightened out. See what we get. Not very good. Let's make sure I'm doing this properly. So we're on circulate, cold, head. Yep, I'm not setting it to max blower because that gets really, really loud. Oh my. So we heard it turn on. But it's not getting cold at all. So again, I'm really curious about this. It could have been, you know what? It might be that's the fans turning on. Any case, system's not working. So we are pretty much ready to go ahead and attempt a fill. So we're going to leave this running, set it to max, and then we're going to do some valve work. Good afternoon, everyone. It is a new day. I'm going to try to finish this out properly this time. I was in a rush for some of the earlier filming segments on this. I'm going to kind of redo them. So where we had left off is we had determined that the compressor was turning on, that the system was holding a little bit of Freon, but not much, and that I was able to add some to it, and it was blowing cold air, but it was short cycling, which meant it did not have enough Freon. I mentioned that when a system is at operational levels of Freon, that on the low side it's going to be between 30 and 40 pounds of pressure, and on the high side between about 175 to 200. The reason why you have this variation is that depending on the ambient air temperature, basically how hot or how cold it is that day, it's going to affect the pressure readings on your manifold gauges. More specifically, you can use a little bit of Google Foo and find the exact operating parameters for your vehicle. Generally, it is posted by the manufacturer. So go check that out before you get started. I'm kind of ballparking it here because honestly, it's a project car. I don't need to be super precise. I just want to get it to the point where it's not short cycling. Another thing you got to think about is whether or not you have enough mineral oil in the system. The compressor uses mineral oil to lubricate seals in the compressor and to keep from tearing itself apart. So if you have a system that's bone dry and has had a catastrophic failure, maybe you've got a new compressor, maybe you have a new condenser, it would behoove you to figure out how much mineral oil, which is commonly called PAG oil or PAG oil, that you're going to need to replace before you start this charging operation. In this case, I'm hearing the compressor, it's not humming or chirping or anything, so I'm assuming there's enough PAG oil in the system. For example, on my truck, condenser failed. So I replaced it, And I talked to the shop before I had a shop charge it, before I had these tools and skills. They said, hey, put, I think they said like 4 or 5 ounces of PAG oil, of this type of PAG oil in. And so I took a syringe and I squirted in the condenser, because generally the mineral oil, since it is heavier, it sits at the bottom of the compressor and it sits at the bottom of the condenser whenever the AC system is not in use. Make sure you have enough, because otherwise your compressor will fire up, it'll run out of oil, run low on oil, chew itself up, and then you're out of compressor. All that said, here is the setup. I have the gauges actually pointing forward today, which is going to be a lot better. I also have my tripod today, so hopefully I can come up with some better shots. We have our charge hose, which is the yellow hose. It is connected to a mostly empty bottle of R134A. I'm going to try to get the rest of it out. What I have been finding, I've been getting a string of these self-sealing cans that when I go to take the can tap off, which is this guy, it doesn't seal. And then it just wants to spew Freon to atmosphere, which is no good at all. So I've been having to get a little creative. The low pressure side in this Miata is up here by the firewall. We know it's low pressure because we have a big fat tube, low pressure. The high pressure side is connected down here up near the plastic air intake, a little bit below it. And we know that's the low pressure side because it's got a skinny tube. Skinny tube means high pressure. Our charge procedure is as follows. We will open up the valve here. We will open up the low pressure valve here. We will open up the low pressure manifold valve up here. We will keep closed the high pressure manifold valve. That stays closed. Before we start charging, the can tap is in the closed position. And while we do this, the engine needs to be running and the air conditioner needs to be set to max. So generally that's the recirculate position with blower at max. So we're going to do all that. And as we start to shake this Freon can to get it moving down the tube, the compressor will kick on, and that's going to create the needed vacuum to pull Freon along the charge tube, the charge hose, into the manifold, and then through the low pressure side, and it will actually insert through the low pressure side. We have a sight glass here to let us confirm that yes, we do have Freon or PAG oil or both moving through. So this sight glass is incredibly handy to let you know that yes, you are actually charging the system. It's not just your imagination. Now, I'm going to try to empty this out. This can is basically empty. There's just a tiny bit left. But the big can I bought for this is here. Bought some of this. This is high mileage. It has some conditioners to help with the seals in the system, since the seals probably had never been replaced. It has dye to help you with leaks, and it, makes things more shiny, right? So this is a 12 ounce. Generally a system's going to take like between 20 to 26 ounces of Freon, depending on if it has only a front climate system or a front and a rear climate system. So expect things like vans and SUVs to have a need for more Freon, and things like Miatas to have a need for less. Again, the way you know you're kind of in the money is that you're not counting ounces of Freon. You're going to watch these gauges, and if you look closely right here, you see that there's 4 rings of measurements here. We have R407C, R404A, R134A, and on the very outer ring we have inches of mercury. So your outer ring is actually for vacuum. The ring we need to pay attention to is the second ring from the left. which is going to be this one here. And we're looking to see it go between 30 and 40 on the low side. Same deal here. We want to pay attention to this ring, and we want to see it go between, like, I guess like 110 to 130, because 150 200 is way over there. That's too high. So it's 150 to 200 if you're looking at inches of mercury, but it's like 110 to 130 if you're looking at the actual R134A measurement ring. All that said, I'm going to go ahead and start the engine. We're going to get the compressor doing its thing, and then I'm going to try to figure out how I could tripod this so you guys can get some good footage. Okay, this is our reading with the valves actually at the system, the high and the low open, and the low pressure manifold open. You see that on the low side it looks okay, but if you come over to the high side you can see it's low. We should be somewhere up in here, and we're not. So the system is still low on Freon. When we come in here, stick our hand in front of a vent, it is blowing cold. It's not ice cold, but it is blowing cold, and we can verify this. Put a temp gun on it. As you can see, it is cooling down, it is blowing cold, but not as cold as it needs to be. Okay, so what I'm going to try to do, and I messed this up royally yesterday, is get a nice shot of Freon going through the sight glass, which that was just not working at all yesterday. So I'm going to go ahead and I've opened up the Freon can. Let's see. And get a little Freon out of this guy. I can feel it in there. It's cold, but there may not be enough in there to actually make its way into the system. Okay, well, did the compressor just kick on? In order for it to get pulled in, the compressor has to turn on. So if the compressor is off, it won't get pulled in. Alright, let me fiddle with this, make sure that I do have everything set correctly. And I may have to switch to a can that has more Freon in it. So I'll bring you guys back. Okay, I have switched to a new can. And before you open it and use it, you need to shake the can up real good. This mixes up conditioners, PAG oil, Freon, whatever. And then we need to open it. So in that case, you actually want it to go down. And you'll hear, okay, so we got a leak. This is not threaded on right. Let me work on this. Okay, so we got a full can of Freon. I think everything's working right. Let's see what we get. Well, first things first, I need to open up the low pressure valve. Okay. Now let's do this. So you see, starting to see some stuff bubble in. And there you go. So you see stuff in the sight glass. So the system is pulling stuff in. And we're kind of keeping an eye on our gauge on the right, our high pressure gauge. You'll notice I'm turning the can between 12 o'clock. You can do 12 and 3 or you can do 12 and 9. I do 12 and 9. I'm left-handed and I hold the can on the right hand. But you're constantly doing this as you're filling. As you can see, got plenty of stuff going in. We got UV dye, we got a little bit of bag oil, not a lot, and we got the Freon, of course, and conditioner type stuff. As you can see on the high side, we've cleared 150 now. That's looking pretty good. We're looking pretty good over here. So I'm going to keep doing this for a while and I'll bring you back. Okay, it's been a couple minutes, and now when the compressor's running with this manifold still open, this is what we're seeing. And the reason why it's dipped down is because this can is basically empty. It no longer has really any Freon in it. And you can see if you look closely that instead of a real vigorous froth inside the sight glass, you see it just kind of bubbles a tiny bit. That's because there's basically no Freon left in the can. We put all 12 ounces in there. So, at this point, it's time to close off this valve. Like so. So you sealed off the can. And now you need to close the manifold, because otherwise what's going to happen when you remove the charge hose, Freon's going to flow out of the manifold through the charge hose and out. So very important. Close this valve before you go to change cans or just remove a can. Because I think I'm pretty happy with where we are. We've gotten it a little bit above 150 or between 20 and 30, which you can see when the system's not in use, a little bit happier. And it's going to kick here in a second. Yeah, there it goes. So I might put a little more in, but I want to see how cold the vents are first. So at this point, if everything has been done right, you should be able to remove this, and it's not going to spew on you. So we'll have to find out if I can take the can tap off or not, but at this point, this bottle is done. So let's go check the vents. Alright. Feels pretty cold, but let's see. What do we get from the temp gun? Do what my son did earlier. There we go. So we're blowing down in the 30s, which is what we want to see with a healthy charge system. So I'm pretty happy with that. Now the only other thing I'm worried about is whether or not the compressor is still kind of short cycling, which I don't think it is, because yesterday it was cycling on and off every 10 seconds. It was kind of crazy, and that's because the system was not full. So I'm gonna run it like this for a bit, and when I eventually get it up to highway speeds, we'll see what it does. So I've got, let's see. Well, I mean, basically I'm out of Freon at this point. So, okay, since at this point I'm done with charging operations, whether I like it or not, I'm out of Freon. We need to go ahead and remove everything. So we can go ahead and turn the engine off. All right, better. These Z-Techs are like sewing machines. Clack, 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 clack. All right, so we need to close all valves. Before we remove them from the AC system, because otherwise it's going to spew. Spew is bad since Freon is not cheap. Be careful with this one, it's around a lot of hot stuff. So close is going to be that the valve cap goes up, not down. These are counter threaded. Basically it's a Schrader valve. Pop them off. It's just got a quick connect. If you get a bang off the high pressure, that's normal. It is high pressure. Yep, little bang. Alright. That's out of the way. Now let's see. Yay, both caps are still here. Make sure you replace your caps. So this should be, nope, that's high pressure. Alright. These just thread right on. Yeah, finger tight's perfectly fine. Lens flare. Okay, so that's going to do it for now. Like I said, I was sloppy as far as getting this dialed in. I could have done some more research and done some more precise calculations, but I want to see how this goes. If I'm blowing cold air consistently and I'm not hearing funny noises out of the compressor, I'm good. This is not a daily driver. This is actually a project car. I mean, that's why it's on the channel. It's a project. But what I showed you, the techniques, the procedure, all of that is valid if you're using an actual manifold gauge. Like I said, there's plenty of videos online for if you get the all-in-one thing at your local auto parts store or Walmart. It's got the low pressure connection already on it. So you don't have a charge hose, you just have this part. And you just have this gauge, basically. You don't have any of the rest of this. But, I mentioned this before, but I may edit that part out because the video I took yesterday was not great. When you factor in the fact that that big old all-in-one can with the low pressure adapter and all that for R134A is like $60, $65 even at Walmart. These gauges plus the amount of Freon you're going to need is only a tiny bit more. And with these gauges you can do a lot more filling. You can also check vacuum, and you can do a ton of other things that are refrigerant related than if you just get the all-in-one use it and throw away setup. So that will do it for this video. Alrighty guys, that's going to do it for our AC recharge and top off for the 95 Mazda Miata behind me. If you like this video, please like, share, subscribe, and do leave me comments so that I kind of have a feel on how I'm doing. I'm also pretty responsive, so if you do have just other car questions, ask. I may know something, I may not. I may at least be able to point you in the right direction. So remember, I make the mistakes, so you don't have to. I'll see you guys next episode.